Hi, everyone. Dr. Jenna Rufo here. One thing we've all been struggling with is how can we make our virtual classrooms more engaging and inclusive? Well, there's really only one way to find out. Let's ask the experts.
Tegan, what do you like about virtual learning?
Spending time with my dad.
Spending time with your daddy?
I'm going to ask you a question. Do you like virtual school?
So I can visit our day.
I also like that we can be at home with our parents and spend a lot of time with them and say going outside with them or playing with a dog that we have.
I like online school because I can eat snacks all day. I get to see my little brother.
Even though he's distracting sometimes, right? Is he back there?
Yes.
Oh, there he is.
What break? And you get to choose what you get to have for lunch, not just 3 limited options.
I also like e-learning because there's not as much drama. Like everyone's muted all the time, so there's no drama that goes on.
And what I do like is I don't have to wear a uniform and I don't have to wake up early. And when it's my lunch break, I get to watch TV.
Oh, okay.
And that's about it.
Okay.
Come on, guys. There has to be more that's exciting about virtual learning than pets, pajamas, snacks, and PJs, right?
One thing I enjoy about online school is being able to do work at your own pace asynchronously.
And you get to work at your own pace.
And I feel like we get to have more ways to work at our own pace and we have more time to work on things in class.
Probably more flexibility in my schedule.
Can you give an example?
Probably like I wasn't doing things for the entire day, and like once I could get those things done early in the morning, and then have bursts of time to relax.
The experts have spoken. Working at their own pace is one thing that students really enjoy about virtual learning. So please, don't try to replicate in-person school online. It doesn't work. Sticking to a rigid system of logging on and off all day and a set number of minutes or periods isn't going to be most effective in a new environment. What you can do is allow for some flexibility by providing acceptable choices. For example, you might tell students that by the end of the class, a certain expectation must be met, but give them choices to get there. You also might need to teach students how to work at their own pace. Some students may have difficulty with time management and need assistance, so you might have to sketch things out or show them how to do it through graphic organizers or planners. And finally, build in some differentiated tasks that allow for both working at your own pace and also some extension for your students who are quick finishers. When allowing for flexibility in schedules and having students work at their own pace, it's important to remember that kids need breaks. Let's hear what our experts have to say about breaks during virtual school.
Vincent, what was your favorite thing about virtual learning?
Breaks.
What was your least favorite thing?
Waiting for my turn and having less breaks. And the things that I do like about online school is that we get breaks. Well, you can get breaks, like it isn't 7 hours straight of school.
So clearly, breaks are important. We can't ask kids to sit in front of a computer screen all day. That's something we as adults have a challenge with. So what happens when we don't get the breaks we need?
And virtual learning was a weird time, honestly. It was like where I was fine with doing it, but then when we started to get into it more, I realized, oh, this actually isn't fun.
And I also don't really like how we have to sit on the computer for 7 hours straight. And if I were on the computer that long, I'd rather just be coding or making video games for Roblox, that type of stuff.
And when you do work on the computer, how does that make you feel?
Bad.
Why?
Because, sitting to work.
Yeah.
To get work on your computer
Yeah, it's something that I think that I don't like about virtual learning. I don't really like that we have to that there's like so much screen time.
Because bowling.
I have to sit in a chair for 5 hours a day.
What I don't like is when I have to be in my room almost all day, and
I hate sitting in front of the computer because it just stiffens my bones.
I don't like not being able to move at all and I don't like needing to stare at a screen all day like that. I would rather do other things like play games or something like that. And work is harder because you have distractions.
Two things that I didn't like is that I was always on my computer and it was hard to focus.
So what's it like to be in virtual school?
It's hard, and I can't really focus as well when I'm in school.
Kids need to move. We've already talked about the importance of breaks, but how else can you incorporate movement? Try a scavenger hunt. For example, maybe you're teaching students about nouns. Have them go through their house and find as many nouns as they can, then bring them back and share to the class. You might also want to try charades. This is great if you're introducing a vocabulary term. Have students act it out. When students are responding, is it really that important that they sit in their desk? Maybe it's time for them to stand, sit, sway, or lay. You can also let students use alternate responses. So instead of responding verbally or through the chat, they could hold up hand signals. So a 1 could mean I get it, a 2 could mean I need some clarification, a 3 I don't understand, and so on. And finally, allow students to use fidgets. These could be things they have in their home, such as silly putty or Play-Doh or a rubber band, just something to get the energy out. Don't view these things as distractions. Fidgets are not distractions. They can provide students with valuable sensory input and are useful tools to help them stay focused. But as long as we're talking about distractions, let's hear from the kids about some of the things that their teachers have deemed as distractions in a virtual environment, as well as some expectations that might be unreasonable in an online world.
I don't like it because I can't eat like in class because they're so like, oh, it's distracting. It's one thing if you're eating in school in person, but you're at your house. It's not distracting. It's not like people are gonna go through the cameras on Zoom and looking directly at you and watch you eat a bag of hot Cheetos. That's not gonna happen.
Eat hot Cheetos.
What do you not like about virtual school?
Homework.
Why?
Because I have to do all of it, and it's hard without my teacher, because my teacher said I have to do it alone.
I have Muddy, and he's so cute.
Yeah, did you get to bring him to school with you online?
They didn't allow it, but sometimes I got to.
Oh, did you sneak him in?
One time when I was sick, I got to, but...
You got to have Muddy come.
Mm-hmm.
So the rules that apply to in-person school might not always make sense for virtual school. Please, let them eat cake, or at least hot Cheetos. And remember that a different environment calls for different expectations. So when thinking about homework, think about how necessary and appropriate it really is. Also consider things like food, eating in front of a camera, bringing your pet on the screen, sitting under your desk or near it instead of in a chair. Consider being flexible about all of these things because really, it doesn't matter. Any grace and flexibility that you can provide with your students during this time is really so important because they've been through a lot.
I don't like how I don't get to see my friends. And like, you don't get to socialize with them.
I didn't like we can't see your friends.
You know, like usually you get to have recess with them and lunch with them, but no, you can't do that in virtual school.
I'm missing all my friends and missing all my teachers too.
One thing I don't like about online school is that you are not able to be as social as you would be in school, such as not being able to see teachers and friends.
I like interacting with people, socializing.
I can't be away from my friends.
You can't see your friends fully, like in class and stuff.
Not being able to see my friends.
I don't like it because I can't see my friends and teachers.
Because I want to see my friends.
What was the most difficult thing about virtual learning?
Probably the fact that you couldn't see your teachers, so you couldn't ask them things really with like a concrete answer.
And that what also that make it better is if maybe that I would get to spend more time with my teacher.
You miss your teacher? Yeah.
Friends. And one thing schools should improve is being able to get more time to get help from your teachers.
What makes it so hard?
Because your teacher can't really help you if you're not in person with them.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
One of the best things you can do for kids is to give them that time that they need to socialize and have friendships. So I suggest that you structure it, because if you don't, they're going to find their own way to do it. And it might be texting while you're trying to teach, or closing the window and playing Roblox in the middle of a math lesson. So try to give students some socialization time. You could set up a lunch bunch where they eat their lunches online recess, so instead of turning off the camera and doing their own thing, they stick around and play together as a group. Might be playing a different kind of game online, or even starting a club. Could be a book club, a chess club, comic book club, whatever your student interests are. Students are also really craving teacher time. Try these ideas when connecting with your students. When you greet a student, greet them individually and by name when they enter the meeting. You can even admit them one by one and chat with them a little bit. You can also practice bank time, which is where students bank time with their teacher. Might be a few minutes before class or a few minutes after class, but it's really in one-to-one or small groups so that the teachers can get to know their students better. You can also exchange private messages with students via the chat or emails to get them more engaged and let them know that you're caring about them. And also, try to provide some social time, either connecting over lunch or virtual groups, clubs, or activities. Another way that teachers like to connect with students is through breakout rooms, but some of our students have differing feelings on this. Let's hear from them.
I like the breakout rooms because you get to work with people, and it's just like you get to like socialize, I guess.
What I like about virtual school is the fact that we get to kind of have interaction with people in a different way. So we can have smaller groups and when they work out, they're really nice because we can, like, if we're confused, we can easily invite the teacher to come in and help us. And she knows that that's what we need help with. Whereas in a normal classroom, you might take a while for you to get your questions get answered. Now, there's some cons to virtual school. One of them is, like, when we're in breakout rooms, people don't pay attention. They just joke around, so you don't really get anything done.
Just like anything else with teaching, the key to a good breakout room is organization and planning. Don't just send students off and expect them to magically figure out what they're supposed to be talking about on their own. One way that you can help kids is by giving them roles for the breakout. You might have a student who is a facilitator in charge of leading the discussion, a note taker who records notes in an electronic fashion, a timekeeper keeping your group on task, the taskmaster, someone who ensures that the group is following the directions, and any remaining group members can be the encouragers, those who work with the group to lift them up and keep them focused and engaged. Also, make sure that there's a level of accountability for the breakout room and that some type of work product has to result. It could be as simple as something written in the chat, but there needs to be something that students must complete. So in addition to breakout rooms, what other ways can we communicate with students effectively? Let's hear from the kids.
Teachers are always like, a lot of kids, they'll unmute themselves and then the teachers are a little bit harsh on them.
One of our teachers, there's like a button you can press, don't allow participants to unmute themselves. So we're not allowed to unmute ourselves, and he disables the chat, so we can't tell him anything. He doesn't even look at his Canvas messages. So really there's no way to communicate with him.
On my third monitor, I join with my PCAs on the Google Meet, and I can do like homework with my aides, and I can do I can chat with them privately.
So we heard some positives and some negatives about communication with students. Let's start with the good stuff.
You may have heard Brianna say at the end that she uses a private chat to communicate with her PCAs or her personal care assistants. A private chat feature is a great way for students who need extra support to privately message those support personnel. Also, when you're using the chat, be it in a large group setting or privately, make sure that you set norms for chats. Don't just turn it off like the teacher that Tessa told us about, but rather give students ways that they should communicate appropriately with one another, and so they know when it's okay to write in the chat and when they need to be listening. Some of the tools that we use for online video conferencing include reaction buttons, such as a thumbs up or a heart or a like symbol, so allow students to use those as well. As we mentioned earlier, the use of hand signals rather than verbally saying something or writing it in the chat is another way that students can communicate. Just be careful what hand signals they're using. Another response method is an electronic one, so rather than only using the chat, you might want to look at other sites such as Padlet, Jamboard, Pear Deck, Nearpod, or ThingLink, which all allow students to share their thoughts either verbally, through sticky notes, or through images. And finally, make sure that students and their families know how they can reach you, be it through email, phone, office hours, and so on.
One problem that we run into, particularly with students in the older grades when we're looking to communicate with them, is that they don't always want to turn their cameras on. This can pose some challenges.
Listen. Another thing is, I don't really get interaction with people. People who just turn their cameras off the whole time, I have to memorize them by their voices and their names without actually seeing them, and I don't know what they look like, so if I were to see them in real life, I would have no clue who they are. We just don't get to know people because all we see is a blank screen, and
it's certainly hard to build community in a classroom when you can't see everyone that you're talking to. But just like we can't force a child to engage when they're in school in person, we can't force them to engage on the computer or turn their video on. However, there are some things we can do to make students feel more comfortable and encourage camera use.
As with most things, building relationships with your students is key. They're more likely to show you their face if they feel like you care about who they are. If a student isn't engaging with their video camera, just ask them why. There could be a very valid reason. It might be something like they're ashamed or embarrassed of what their background looks like, and that's when you can tap into virtual backgrounds, which we'll talk about in a minute. You can send students a private message asking them, "Hey, I'd really love to see your face today. Can you turn your camera on?" Set some expectations for on and off camera use. If you find that a lot of your students aren't comfortable using the camera, give them time when it's acceptable to turn it off and then when you really want it on. Also, ask them to respond with visual responses, either by holding up a hand or a sign or a symbol, and this would require their camera use. And as I mentioned earlier, allow students to use virtual backgrounds or filters if it makes them feel more comfortable. Because, after all,
if I didn't use a virtual filter, this is what I would look like. And nobody wants to see that. Now that I know you haven't fallen asleep just yet, you might be thinking right about now, "Jenna, this really doesn't seem like rocket science." And you're right, it's not. It's good teaching. And the same good teaching skills that hold true in person also translate well online. However, practices that are generally ineffective in school are even worse and exacerbated when they are transferred to an online setting. Think about it. Things like call and response or lecture, or things when students are generally pretty passively engaged, really do not suit themselves well for online learning.
So, instead of a lecture or the online equivalent of a worksheet, try any of these ideas instead. A brochure, a drawing, a video, a journal entry. Have them do an elevator pitch where they need to explain something in 30 seconds or less. Ask students to make an infographic or a visual representation of the topic on the computer. Maybe they'd like to make a sculpture or explain something in a tweet in a certain number of characters or less. Ask students to write a newspaper article. Maybe they'll complete a word cloud or make a commercial or develop a song or rap or presentation. Any of these options are much more engaging than having students simply sit and listen or complete a boring worksheet online.
I recently heard someone describe COVID-19 like this. She said, "We were all put in timeout for a reason." So what's that reason for education? Maybe it's time that we finally let go of our dated practices, the practices that really weren't all that successful when we were in person. Practices like lecture, call and response, worksheets, things where students sit by as passive recipients of knowledge rather than active learners. Let's let go of our imaginary systems of general education and special education and other support services, because at this time, all of our children need us. All of our kids can benefit from the varied expertise of our educators. So while good teaching is good teaching, let's keep what we know works: differentiation, choice, flexibility, and building relationships with students, and let's let go of the rest. Thank you, and I wish you all the best on your virtual journey.